At 38 out of 100, it's the highest in 2 years, an improvement but still not great.
It has increased very rapidly, and I must say I'm impressed by parts of the pipeline. Indeed, the building contractors have gone down and are at their lowest levels in the cycle. But it is the other parts of the pipeline where we're seeing the early confidence coming through, and very strong in some respects.
So when you say the early parts of the pipeline, where would that be? Would that be for building plans and architects and things?
Well, you plan first, you have additions, alterations, renovations second, and then ultimately the building contractors also kick in. And it is especially architects and quantity surveyors which have jumped very strongly the last 2 quarters. Followed by the retailers of the merchants of building materials, where we're now above 50. Also the manufacturers of building materials have shown a very sharp increase from near 0 to 27. 27 is still very large, a very low number. The point though is they're moving now very quickly. Compared to the building contractors where we still see lower levels and hanging in there.
Cees, also just looking at the fact that things are going to start slowing down extensively in the construction sector now that we're heading towards the holiday season. Looking forward into early 2011, do you expect a significant pickup given the fact that the pipeline projects are starting to filter through?
Yeah, seasonality has nothing to do with these quarterly surveys, so we're very much looking at a trend line. We would suggest that especially in the planning phase, the architects and quantity surveyors, but also the retailers and the manufacturers of building materials will probably sustain the kind of confidence that we're seeing. They are experiencing better levels of activity, and for my money 2011 will be a better year than 2010. When it comes to the building contractors, it takes quite a long time, between 12 and 18 months, between having the plans and actually starting the activity. So from our point of view, despite the builders still sending strong signals about what they hope for the next quarter, from our point of view it will probably take another 12 months for these benefits to actually start coming through on the building contractor side.
As you said, 38 is quite a big improvement from where we were, and I think 24 was the lowest point in this cycle. How does it compare historically though to levels of perhaps a few years ago before we had this boom and bust scenario?
Well, for the last 2 years, this particular index has been sitting in the 30 level range. So we're breaking out of that pattern. Other than that, these kind of levels are recessionary levels.
Let's touch on the residential and non-residential contractors. You know, we know that they were perhaps slightly too optimistic in the 3rd quarter. Things changing quite significantly. Do you think that what they're portraying at this point in time is far more realistic?
No, they continue, when we ask them about the next quarter, they continue to signal very strongly positive. But the actual confidence levels that come out for the quarter then that is passed, and that is the number that we measure, you have these fallbacks. Now in terms of non-residential, it has fallen from a 26 to an 18 reading. That is pretty low, and non-residential of course lags the residential side. But on the residential side, they did it in the 3rd quarter, and they've now done it again in the 4th quarter. They give us a strong hint that the next quarter has to be better. But the realities of the situation, I would suggest, is that for at least the next 12 months we will be experiencing.
Why do you think they're getting it wrong, Cees?
Oh, there is always hope in this particular industry. But also, I think very importantly, there must be a certain amount of confusion given that we've had 2 years now of very sharply falling interest rates. And traditionally that gives a very early kick to this industry. And that has not come through at all. And that takes you back to credit and all its issues. So for the building industry, this is a very frustrating time in that certain indicators are very much there, should already have given a very strong signal for them. But yet they are invited to wait because it is taking longer to make the adjustment.
Because we had money supply and credit numbers out this morning, and they show a pickup in demand, also still quite muted, but really being driven by mortgage advances. So would you expect this to then start feeding into property prices and into residential building?
A little early, because watching grass grow I think is more exciting at the moment than seeing credit grow. We're seeing these very slow pickups month after month, but we're still only at the 5% level. Indicative, I think, that there is still an oversupply there relative to demand that is being satisfied. The credit mechanism is taking its time adjusting in this respect. Property prices, the growth in property prices has eased off again considerably. And that condition I don't think is going to clear up quite quickly. So again, there too, for the next 12 months at least, we continue to have a stagnating environment.
Looking at building plans passed as well, what kind of impact is this going to play in the overall construction sector?
Strong signal, cyclically, that at least on that point, where the residential side is concerned, you're now into positive territory from May this year. So the last 6 months, we have building plans passed, sending a signal that the cycle is on its way. The problem are the lags. It takes quite a while for this to actually translate into rising activity levels, and for that reason, we still remain very early, I think, in the building proper pickup.
And of course, you also point out in today's release that the residential building normally leads non-residential, so you would expect that to lag even further behind.
We're very much looking after next year for the non-residential side.
Because we had some economic data out last week. We had growth figures which came in a little bit disappointing. We also had inflation starting to pick up. Just building that with what we've seen here today, what are you seeing the South African economy like at the moment? Because it looks like we are losing momentum quite quickly.
Yeah, but for very specific reasons. Everybody went out on strike, so we mustn't be surprised that the third quarter gave us the GDP number that we got. In the fourth quarter, we won't have the strike distortion. Manufacturing certainly will not be going down at the rate of -5 that it did, and I don't think the public sector will be doing 0.4. So for me, the fourth quarter will be much better, and it will give a general lift to the overall GDP number for this year. And then into next year, I think we will see a growth momentum over 3%. Until, of course, we see what the full year has to offer, and that remains to be seen.